welcome everyone to today's session, um, the Stratum Insight web-based training series. And today we'll be talking about calculations. We'll go into some calculation examples today. We'll have a quick review, how to build a calculation, go through some common business calcs, and then how you can use other elements within your calculation, such as attributes and some of the new the calculation functions that we've added. We'll take a look at those as well. So welcome, and we'll step right into it. So basically, running a view, obviously you can run an existing view, and obviously that brings the data to your screen. You might have calculations in there already. Yeah, such as the view that you're looking at now. We do have, as you can see, some percent of change calculations in there. And so if we were to take a look at those, if we simply just double click on the header of that calculation column, we can then see what the calculation syntax is. And as we can see right away that this particular calculation is using a function for percent of change. So if we take a look at the Stratum viewer functions over here on the left-hand side, we can see that the folder contains several functions that are available to the user. As we can see, the percent of change function has been used here to give us the percent of change between those two measures that the user has selected this year and last year's sales amount for July through September. If we were to take a look at the syntax of that particular function, we can see that the default syntax is basically, it just asks us to pick two columns. Essentially, is that all we need to do to create this particular calculation? So if we were to start from scratch, then all I would need to do is to recreate this would be to click on the percent of change. And if I go to my measure items, then I can pick those same two columns that were selected before. And as you can see, it fills in the syntax for you. You don't have to type the stuff in, nor would you want to. You would need to use the interface to fill in what the function is asking you for. Let me do that again, and I'll show you, basically how you click on the function that will give you the function that you need, for instance, percent of change. And notice how it's asking for numerical expressions 1 and 2. Now, if I go into those, I can click on anything here, and it will give me the percent of change of whatever I click on, right? So if it's this year to date or my current month, this year versus last, it doesn't matter as long as I click on the one that I need, such as this year versus last for that rolling, in this case, July through September, then I can go ahead and validate the expression to make sure that the syntax is good. And as you can see, it comes back, expression is valid. That's what you want to see. Up here, you can also format the data on the fly. So if you want the data to have a single decimal spot, then you can go ahead and select that particular format display mask, or you can select anything else if you want, maybe 2 decimal spots for your percent. In this case, we're selecting a percent because that's basically what it's going to be, a percentage number. If I click OK, it goes ahead and makes those changes. I now have the double-digit percent of change. And as we can see that, overall business is good this year versus last for that time range for July through September. So now if I were to do the math on that, for instance, I would basically, it would be quite, a lot more syntax to fill that in. Okay, so on top of that, you can do other functions. Maybe you don't want the percentage change. Maybe you want the achievement percent, which is similar. If I were to select those same two measures, and as you can see, it looks a little different, doesn't it? In this case, basically, it shows you that we've fulfilled 100% of last year's amount, and now we're 23.46% above that number. So it kind of, it's very similar to percent of change, but it kind of adds that 100% to it so that you know you're over. If I were to drill down, let's see if we can find areas where at the product level, perhaps we see some declines. I don't see any declines there, although if I did the same thing here, we do see some declines in terms of yeah, so that's using the percentage change too. If we were to change that over to the achievement percent, and we'll see the difference there as well. And again, selecting the same measures. Yeah, so as you can see, it's showing me that and lobbing in that 100%, right? So it's showing me that same thing. We can see that, all of these are over the same month of the prior year. Okay, so the achievement percent, you want to make sure that you use the one that gives you the result that you're looking for the percent of change versus the achievement percent. Another nice function is the count member. It's fairly new, where you can count, um, perhaps maybe as an example, the products that are being sold. So if I were to select product for my level and I select sales for my measure, my numeric expression, and I'll select year-to-date sales. All right, so it's going to count the products that are being sold year-to-date, and I need to change my display mask so that's not a percent any longer. We'll just select a regular number, a whole number display mask. And we can come back to the brand level and we can see that our bigger brands, as you can see, Farm Fresh has 52 products in it. We see First Choice has 30. We can look at this at the sold to level to see how many products are sold to each one of our customers. Here we can see 63 are sold to Wilder Foods, 60 are sold to Wilder Foods Western, and so on and so forth. So it's giving us the product counts at the customer sold to level. And if I drilled a product, I can see that what those 63 products are for Wilder Foods. And then it shows me those 63 products. The row count says 64 because that includes the grand total level at the bottom. So that count function, before the syntax of that was pretty atrocious. So the developers did a nice job of simplifying this by using the count member function. So that one, it's a very easy, and I think that it does a lot. It really kind of pops out at you. Just that you can see, how many products are sold at any of the given levels. I can make this at company level. I can make this at regional level to see how many products we're selling at the different regions. Is right away I can see that the East region is the dominant region in my business. So, it's great that it just gives you the entire count, and it doesn't matter you know, what level you show the data at, it's still going to give you that count. So that was fairly new and has been added in one of the newer versions is the count member function. Another one of these functions is the ability to segregate and to classify products, for instance, ABC classification. So if we were to take a look at a view that does some of that, we can go in and see this is more inventory based. So switching gears a little bit, looking at my inventory. Well, this is sales based. As we can see, it's ABC sales based. So, how am I getting the sale? So it's basically recommending here based on year-to-date sales. It's recommending my ABC classification. We can see here frozen lasagna dinner is my top selling item year to date. So obviously my A items are my top selling items. And then the threshold cuts to my B items and then on down to my C items, which are, smaller selling items. If I were to take a look at that function, we can see that it's using the ABC cumulative percent function. And then I need to tell it, well, what measure to use for that function. We can see that it's using the actual sales measure for January through September, so year to date. And then my thresholds for the ABC classification. So I need to, give it some sort of threshold here so it knows how to do the different classifications. If I want to tweak this a little bit, maybe make this a 2, and I can make that an 8 as opposed to a 0.7, then it'll give it that it'll change the range a little bit in terms of the B's and the C's. As you can see, the B came up more because the threshold was changed. I can lower that down to, maybe make that a 6, and then that would be more like a 3. You can make your A items more tolerant of sales. If you want your A items to be a larger pool, then you can make that, you can tweak these numbers to get what you need out of that. If I want my A items to be instead of 30%, I want them to be the top 40%. And then I can tweak that number down to maybe a 5 for the B items. So my threshold of A items just went down to the peach item as opposed to, stopping up here. I believe it's stopping here, fruit cocktail. My B items are kind of small. Maybe that needs to be tweaked a little bit. So I can tweak that out, and get a wider range of B items. Oops, I didn't want to do that. There we go. And that looks pretty well distributed, actually. So we can see that, 40%, 70%, you can kind of tweak out what your cutoffs are going to be based on those ratios. And, then you can output this to an Excel spreadsheet. You can feed that into MRP. You can get this interface back to your ERP master file so that you have the ABC classifications interfaced back to ERP. And that will help drive, planning, inventory, supply chain planning, help you concentrate on the higher revenue items. It makes it easier for the planners to do their jobs. Another cool calculation is the ability to do some sort of expiration, days till expiration. So this particular view is obviously inventory related. So we can see that I've got my lot and my product combinations. I've got a lead time expressed. I've got days till expiration, on hand, units allocated, units available, and then on hand value. And so we can see that, we've got some areas of concern um, where we've got days till expiration. So we can see that, this is a little hard coded here, but we can see that there's a days till expiration between this hard coded date, which really should be today, And then and we can mimic that to today, actually. We'll do 8-1. How's that? So we can see, and the reason why they're doing that is for the time, I believe. Yeah. Let's rerun that. So for the measures of our, so this calculation is doing a couple things. If that on-hand value is greater than zero, it wants to do a date difference between this date and the lot expiration date. So the lot expiration date is probably hidden. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. And there it is. So let's take a look at that. Well, that's not working out. Well, I had another one that works better. There it is. Update these time frames and we'll take a look at this. Yeah, so here we can see basically kind of the same concept. We can see that there is a date difference function, and we can see that it's being from now till the product effective date. So this is doing exactly what it's designed to do. As you can see, the effective date is 2004. Right. So these products have been effective for X amount of days. We can see 7,320 some odd days, in terms of the difference between this today's date and the effective date of the product. So that's using the date difference function, which is actually not part of the Stratum viewer functions. It's part of the MDX functions. So this kind of goes into some other functions that you can use to format the data as well. Here we can see date diff or date difference. If I were to click on that, we can see the syntax of that particular function. It's not as difficult as it looks. All you need in this case is an interval and then two dates, essentially, is all you really need. And that's what my syntax is looking for up there. Date difference. I want to see the date difference in terms of days or a D. Now, open and close paren is today's date. And then I just grab the effective date attribute from the product hierarchy. So that's just part of the attributes that are available for the product. So again, you can use the functions within the Stratum Viewer function folder, and then you also have a set of functions that are available to you under the MDX functions, and there's a lot of them. Um, I use some things. Sometimes I do like left or right if I want to parse out some data and show that. I can do that too. For instance, here, if I wanted to just show the year of the effective date as another column, I can add another calculated column to the right. And if I go into my MDX functions, and I select right, and I'll just parse out the year of that effective date. So I select the effective date, and then for the length is going to be 2, I believe, right? And the format, we'll just format that as a number. And so that's the year. So it's grabbing the year, and there we can see '03 from '03. And then I can name that column, effective date year. Effective date year. I could sort that in ascending or descending fashion. And there's my O3s. So that's yet another example of using a function, in this case, the right or left function on an attribute field for product to parse out that piece, the chunk of data that you're looking for within that attribute. So, these can be pretty powerful as well. And you've got a plethora of those to look at, particularly under the VBA. You'll find some that are going to absolute value. You can convert things to date. We looked at the date difference. We looked at using the left and right. There's also a middle, all kinds of things that you can do. There's the today function, which gives you that now, open and close paren now, so that's today. So if you want to, have today's date, even today's date visible, um, you can, do that too. I think you have to format that a certain way. Not sure exactly why it's showing that number per se. I think that there's some other things you have to do to get that to show properly. But yeah, you can do a lot of things. As you can see, I am using that now function as the date difference, right? So it's clearly using the date difference between those two, today's date and going back to 2004. I would say 7,000. It's probably the right number. Okay, so a lot to look at. The count, remember. Another thing here is that, if you were to do, for instance, calculations against the attribute itself, for instance, if I were to go to product uh, and maybe add in, list price as an attribute, right? So, there it's a numeric attribute. We can right click that header and go to the properties menu, and we can see that it is specified as a data type of a number. So this is part of the new release is the ability to format an attribute as either text or a number. And so if you have an attribute out there that's numeric in value, then you certainly would probably want that to be switched over to number as the data type. And then that way you can sort and filter on these accordingly. And they sort properly for you because it's now valued as a numerical value, right? Another thing I can do is I can add that into um, a calculation. So if I wanted to maybe calculate sales current like list price um, and multiply that against my units. So I'll add in, for instance, maybe I'll change my one of my measures to units, right? And if I want to calculate that against my list price, then I can get an extended list price. So I'm going to add in a calculation. I go grab the attribute that I just added in for a product and my current list priced, and I'll multiply that against my sales units. And that format will be dollar sign. And there's my extended sales for that time range. And I can compare, what that number would be for 2004. And we can see that now I've got um, some discounting going on here, right? So this is my list price, and I can rename that header, of course, if I wanted that to say list price. So now I've got my list price and I've got my actual sales price. And basically I just, multiplying that against my units to get that list price amount. And then I can calculate the difference between those two columns and get my discount. So if I were to calculate the difference on those two, I'll just add in another calculation. I could get my sales amount for that. Well, let's do the list first. Let's do list minus my sales. And that's going to be a dollar format. And we'll call this discount. And there's my discount. Wow, look at that, eight. So now I could sort this in descending fashion, and we could see the bigger discounted items based on list price versus actual sales amount. Okay, so again, that's these are the different functions that are available to you. We can see that doing math against an attribute at the product level, it doesn't really matter as long as the attribute is numeric. You can then format it as a number and then do math, incorporate that in your calculations with the other measures, which is what I've done here to get my extended list price for my discount analysis. Okay, so lots of functions to delve into there. Again, explore your functions here within the MDX functions folder, and then certainly look at the Stratum viewer functions that are available as well. You can even do a percent of subtotal, so that solves the problem of percent of total not being proper for subtotal views. So that's yet another thing to look into. Use the help in the upper right hand corner. You can get to your help menu and you can search for calculations here. So if I want to go delve more into calculations, then I can go into creating calculated measure items. And it really actually goes into a lot of examples. You can see of the different the functions that are available. There's the count member function. We went into that, and just to show the number of UPCs per sales amount. So it goes through basically a lot of the examples that we went through today. There's the percent of subtotal, so that's or percent of total, and then it goes into percent of subtotal. So you can kind of read up on some of these calculations and some of these functions and what they're doing.